Buddhist Doctrine. Technical Zen terms and proper names. Words associated with Zen. Special Buddhist terms and phrases, Buddhist doctrines, and Buddhist sects and sutras which are mentioned in the text but not explained therein are defined or explained at length here. These notes are not intended to be a dictionary of Zen terms, much less a definitive statement of Buddhist doctrine or philosophy. Yet they comprise more than a mere glossary of academic definitions. Their purpose is to help readers understand the text and to facilitate their further study and practice. Rather than indicate the Chinese ideographs for Japanese and Chinese names and terms, which could be meaningful only to specialists in the Japanese or the Chinese language, I have used the Roman transcriptions. Where a word is better known in its original Sanskrit or Chinese than in English or Japanese, I have shown it first according to its native spelling, adding in parentheses its equivalent in English or Japanese, or both. The names of the Chinese Zen masters are listed according to the way they are pronounced in Japanese, with the Chinese reading shown in parentheses. The names of sutras are invariably given in their Sanskrit spelling as well as in Japanese, and, in some cases, in English. Japanese names and words are marked J. Sanskrit, SKT. And Chinese, CH. Diacritical marks will be found only in this section. Abhidharma. The third of the three baskets, or Tripitaka, of Buddhist literature, the other two being the Vinaya. That is, the precepts or moral rules given by Buddha to his followers. And the Sutras, which consist of a collection of the Buddha's sermons, discourses, and dialogues compiled after his parinirvana. The Abhidharma contains highly abstract, philosophical elucidations of Buddhist doctrine. Agura. The loose cross-legged sitting position which is neither the half nor the full lotus. Amitabha. Literally, boundless light, or Amateos, boundless life. Amitabha is the most widely venerated of the non-historical Buddhas. Indeed, the Pure Land sects he overshadows both Vairochana and the historic Buddha Shakyamuni. Avatamsaka Sutra. A profound Mahayana sutra embodying the sermons given by the Buddha immediately following his perfect enlightenment. Baso. One of the great Chinese Zen masters of the Tiang dynasty. A disciple of Nangaku. Birth and death. The world of relativity. The transformation which all phenomena, including our thoughts and feelings, are ceaselessly undergoing in accordance with the law of causation. Birth and death can be compared to the waves on the ocean. The rise of a wave is one birth and the fall one death. The size of each is conditioned by the force of the previous one, itself being the progenitor of the succeeding wave. This process infinitely repeated is birth and death. See also 6 realms of existence, karma, and diagram under consciousness. Bodhidharma. The 28th patriarch in line from the Buddha, the first patriarch of Zen in China. Scholars disagree as to when Bodhidharma came to China from India, how long he stayed there, and when he died. But it is generally accepted by Japanese Zen Buddhists that he came by boat from India to southern China about the year 520 and that after a short, abortive attempt to establish his teachings there he went to Luoyang in northern China and finally settled in Shaolin Temple, located on Mount Su. Here for 9 years he steadily did Zazen, whence this period has come to be known as his 9 years of facing the wall. Bodhidharma and Hui Kei, his disciple to whom he transmitted the Dharma, are the subject of the 41st koan in the Mumonken as well as of a famous painting by Sesshu, Japan's greatest painter. Hui Kei, a scholar of some repute, confesses to Bodhidharma, who is silently doing Zazen, that he has no peace of mind and asks how he can acquire it. Bodhidharma turns him away, saying that the attainment of inward peace involves long and hard discipline and is not for the conceited or faint-hearted. Hui Kei, who has been standing outside in the snow for hours, implores Bodhidharma to help him. Again he is rebuffed. In desperation he cuts off his left hand and offers it to Bodhidharma. Now convinced of his sincerity and determination, Bodhidharma accepts him as a disciple. Whether these episodes are historically true or not is less important than the fact that they symbolically reveal the importance which Zen masters attach to the hunger for self-realization. To Zazen, and to sincerity and humility, perseverance and fortitude as prerequisites to the attainment of the highest truth. Bodhi mind. Intrinsic wisdom. The inherently enlightened heart-mind. Also the aspiration toward perfect enlightenment. Bodhisattva. An enlightened being who, deferring his own full Buddhahood, dedicates himself to helping others attain liberation. In his self-mastery, wisdom, and compassion, a bodhisattva represents a high stage of Buddhahood, but he is not yet a supremely enlightened, fully perfected Buddha. Bodhisattvas, like Buddhas, are not merely personifications of abstract principles, but are prototypes of those states of highest knowledge, wisdom, and harmony which have been realized in humanity and will ever have to be realized again and again. Brahmajala Sutra. Here are to be found the 10 major precepts and 48 lesser ones which form the ethical basis of Mahayana Buddhism. Buddha. A Sanskrit word used in two senses. 1. Ultimate truth or absolute mind, and 2. One awakened or enlightened to the true nature of existence. The Buddha refers to a historical person with the given name of Siddhartha and family name of Gautama, who was born around the year 563 B.C. The son of the ruler of the Shakyas, whose small kingdom lay at the foothills of present-day Nepal. In time he came to be known as Shakyamuni, the silent sage. That is, Muni, of the Shakya clan. It is recorded that he was married at the age of 16 and had a son, who would later become his disciple. Deeply troubled by the sorrows and tribulations of human life and perplexed by the meaning of birth and death, the future Buddha at the age of 29 could no longer bear the life of ease and luxury into which he had been born. And he fled his father's palace to become a recluse, a seeker after truth in the solitude of forests. For a time he undertook the severest ascetic practices to gain enlightenment. Close to death as a result of these austerities, he at last saw the futility of self-mortification, abandoned it, and finally won perfect enlightenment, becoming the Buddha. Thereafter for 45 years, until his death at the age of 80, he not only taught his own band of monk disciples but tirelessly trudged the roads of India preaching to all who would listen, always suiting his exposition to the capacity of his hearers' understanding. Men and women were moved to follow his way to spiritual emancipation, as much by his serenity and compassion as by the wisdom of his words. Eventually his sermons and dialogues were recorded, and these sutras now comprise the basic doctrines of Buddhism. The Zen sect, in common with other Buddhist sects, accepts the historic Buddha neither as a supreme deity nor as a savior who rescues others by taking upon himself the burden of their sins. Rather, it venerates him as a fully awakened, fully perfected human being who attained liberation of body and mind through his own human efforts and not by the grace of any supernatural being. Nor does Buddhism look upon Shakyamuni as the only true Buddha. Just as in previous world epochs other sages had trodden the same path, attained the same level of perfection, and preached the same Dharma, so would there be Buddhas in subsequent world cycles to lead human beings to liberation. The historic Buddha, then, is but a link in a chain of Buddhas extending from the remotest past to the immeasurable future. The familiar statement of the Zen masters that we are all Buddhas from the very first must be understood in the sense that potentially everyone is a Buddha. That is, inherently endowed with the unblemished Buddha nature, but that the candidate for Buddhahood must follow the arduous road to enlightenment in order to realize this innate perfection. Anyone who has experienced his Buddha nature, however faintly, has realized the first stage of Buddhahood, since in substance this realization is no different from the Buddha Shakyamuni's. However, in the degree of his enlightenment as well as in the perfection of character and personality. That is, in equanimity, compassion, and wisdom. Shakyamuni Buddha towers above the person of average enlightenment. A simple comparison would be between a Sunday painter and Rembrandt. Both are painters, but in their respective levels of attainment there is a vast difference. Various classifications of the stages of Buddhahood are to be found in the Sutras. A Buddha in the highest stage is not only fully enlightened but a perfect one who has become whole, complete in oneself, that is, one in whom all spiritual and psychic faculties have come to perfection, to maturity, to a state of perfect harmony, and whose consciousness encompasses the infinity of the universe. Such a one can no longer be identified with the limitations of an individual personality, character, and existence. Of such a person it is rightly said that there is nothing by which he could be measured, there are no words to describe him. A Buddha has three bodies or planes of reality, though actually the three are one interrelated whole. The first is designated Dharmakaya. This is the experience of cosmic consciousness, of oneness that is beyond every conception. The unconditioned Dharmakaya is the substratum of completeness and perfection out of which arise all animate and inanimate forms and moral order. Vairochana. J. Virushana, the all-illuminating one, embodies this aspect of universal consciousness. The second body is the Sambhogakaya, which is the experience of the rapture of enlightenment, of the Dharma mind of the Buddha and the ancestral teachers, and of the spiritual practices which they have transmitted from generation to generation. Amitabha Buddha in his Western paradise symbolizes this bliss body, the body of transformation. Nirmanakaya, the third aspect, is the radiant, transformed Buddha body, personified by Shakyamuni, the Tathagata, as he appears in the world with his 32 signs of perfection. The interrelation of these three can be illustrated by a simple analogy. The Dharmakaya can be likened to the field of medical knowledge, the Samagakaya to the training by which a doctor acquires his knowledge, and the Nirmanakaya to the application of this knowledge in the treatment of individual patients, who are thereby transformed from sickness to health. Of the non-historical Buddhas, identified with different worlds and realms and symbolic of particular spiritual forces and powers, there is little reference made in Zen except to Vairochana and Amitabha. Buddha nature, a concrete expression for the substratum of perfection, of completeness, intrinsic to both sentient and insentient life. Buddhism. Buddhism, or more precisely, the Buddha's Dharma, has two main branches. The southern or Theravada, also known as the Hinayana, and the northern or Mahayana. The Theravada arose in southern India, whence it spread to Ceylon, Burma, Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia. The Mahayana moved from northern India to Tibet, Mongolia, China, Korea, and Japan. In Vietnam both schools may be found. Unlike southern Buddhism, which tended to remain conservative and doctrinaire, the Mahayana adapted itself to the needs of peoples of diverse racial and cultural backgrounds and varying levels of understanding. Thus in China, to which country Buddhism found its way in the 1st century, various sects arose which elaborated certain aspects of the Buddha's Dharma in preference to others under the influence of Taoism, Confucianism, and other forms of Chinese culture. Chief among these may be mentioned the T'ien Tai, the Qing Ti Tsung, that is, the Pure Land, the Chayan, and the esoteric sects. In Tibet, because of unique geography, climate, and strenuous conditions of life, the tantric elements in the Buddha's Dharma had a preponderant appeal and sects grew up which emphasized this aspect of the Buddha's teaching. In the 6th century the Buddhism that came to Japan from China via Korea was further refined and elaborated by the Japanese in terms of their hierarchical society, their highly developed aesthetic sense, and their closeness to nature. The ideal type in the Mahayana became the Bodhisattva, ever ready to sacrifice himself in the interest of those lost in ignorance and despair, even while striving for his or her own supreme enlightenment. In Theravada the emphasis falls on the Arhat, who, having single-mindedly overcome his passion and his ego, has gained liberation for himself. Butsudan, literally, shrine of the Buddha, a Buddhist altar shrine, a small model of which most Japanese Buddhists maintain in their own home. In addition to a figure of one of the Buddhas or Bodhisattvas, It usually contains a tablet with the names of the family dead. Offerings of food and flowers are regularly offered up to the memory of the deceased at the Butsudan, and on special occasions certain sutras are chanted before it. Cave of Satan. Also called the pit of pseudo-emancipation. This is a stage in Zazen where one experiences absolute serenity and is bedeviled into believing it to be self-realization. It requires an inspired effort to break out and go beyond this state. Kisha. Founder of the therein Buddhist sect in China. See also 8 teachings and 5 periods. Chuangzi. A Chinese Taoist sage of the 4th century BC who expounded the doctrines of Lao Tzu with wit and originality. Chiho Miahan, ch. Cheng Feng Ming Pen, 1263–1323 a Chinese Zen master.